What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Blitz. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, and I'm going to give you a weird title. I think you are the best and quickest turnaround of a podcaster I've ever seen. Founder of the Zone, Toni. How are you doing?
What's good? I'm all right, man. Yeah, not too bad.
And we're joined by friend of the show. He's the founder of the Touchdown. You can hear him on Clap Soon Packet Podcast. Simon Carroll, how are you?
Not too bad, guys. Thanks for having me again.
So, guys, week 10's done. The NFL is kind of now shaping up. You're kind of seeing which teams are good, which teams are kind of towards the back end, and some that are just struggling to get into the playoff picture. But I want to start by looking at, I guess, the biggest thing that happened probably since the last time we were on here. So straight away, Sam, I'm going to you. I believe the last time you were on here, we had Von Miller that went to the Rams. Now, with everything that happened, we talk about trade deadline. Where would Odell go? He went to the Rams. Yesterday was his debut for them. A lot was made of Baker Mayfield not being able to target Odell. It's Baker's fault that he can't get the receptions. Yesterday, we kind of saw that 3 targets, 2 catches, 18 yards. If you had to, start with, let's grade the performance of Odell. What would you say out of 10 would be this performance from Odell? And did you expect that, bearing in mind it's Monday Night Football, LA, everything's on him?
I think, first and foremost, I don't think the Rams would have played him if Robert Woods hadn't been injured for the season. I don't think they would have wanted to throw him in such short notice. So give him a tough grade, really, I suppose, would be harsh on him. I know it's only 2 catches, and I think they wanted to get him involved early. Stafford's first pass went to Odell, didn't it? But it didn't go well. I think the one pass that went his way that he didn't catch ended up as the interception, didn't he? Ended up playing a defensive back and trying to stop the pass in the end. But yeah, it wasn't glorious. It's unsurprising, isn't it? Really, when you look at it. I mean, the guy's been there a week, less than a week. It's not going to be. And it's a Sean McVay offense that, by all accounts, isn't simple to pick up, is it? So I think they would have wanted more time. I don't think you can be too harsh on him based on the sheer time. And I think we discussed last time, didn't we? I think we all said that saying that his time in Cleveland was his fault or Baker's fault or anything like that was just a bit unfair, really, as well. Sometimes these guys just don't work out in situations. I think 1 week in LA, which is very much a market destined where OBJ was going to go. I don't think you can really judge anything just yet. But in terms of the performance himself, about 3 catches, you could argue that's not a bad return. So you can give him like a 7 out of 10. But also, if that's what you're going to do all game, and you really count on now to be lined up opposite Van Jefferson and Cooper Kupp, then maybe even lower than that. It's certainly not the start that I think the Rams wanted.
And what about you, Tony? I know you're an Odell guy. For me, I'll talk about my perception of Odell after. But when you look at Odell and you see the fit of him going to the Rams, bear in mind Woods has just got injured. Is this, I guess, did somehow the stars align with him for him now to go there, and then they get injured to the second receiver, making him now the second focal point of the Rams offense?
Yeah, I think the Rams was a good choice because one, with Odell, we were thinking it's a market he wants to go to. You can't say no to LA. One, you had people like LeBron saying, free Odell, stuff like that. 2, the Rams was a good fit because he will go into this team and the spotlight won't be on him it will be on him because he's Odell Beckham Jr., but it won't be on him because he's not the number 1 receiver on that team. Right now it's Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp has crazy numbers this year. Cooper Kupp is your primary target. So it was good for him to go from Cleveland to the Rams because you know what? You got to look at it. As Simon said, if Robert Woods didn't was an ACL and out for the season, right? So if Robert Woods didn't get that ACL injury, we don't think OBJ would have been thrown into the deep end like that. And he's been there less than a week. Sean McVay has one of the most complicated offenses in the league. So I wasn't expecting a massive OBJ is going to go for 10 catches, 100 or something yards. No one expected that yesterday. But I feel like give it time. He's in a good situation. He's got a better quarterback with Matthew Stafford in comparison to Baker Mayfield. So we should see more of him as the season goes on. And the Rams are going to be a good team. They're going to be a winning team. We're going to see him in the playoffs for the first time. Well, no, he played in the playoffs for Cleveland, didn't he? So it's not the end of the world in a sense that OBJ is not going to light up it's not going to be like the New York Giants, but he's the number one guy and it's going to be going to him constantly. He's going to get his numbers and his numbers will improve, but it's good for him because now he can just focus on his ball and his play because he's not the number one guy. He can still get the numbers in that offense. And so I feel like it was a good move for him overall.
I mean, I'm going to go to you, Simon, on this point then. Where Toni says Cooper Kupp is the number one receiver, I think when we watch the Rams, we see that similarly, I think people are talking about the Packers, it is Rodgers and Devontae Adams, then it's somebody else. In this case, it's Stafford and Kupp. Do you think then, with Odell coming with the name, the brand, the lights, is it going to be a bit too difficult to put him into the offense as the number two guy? And do you think it may take away the receptions from Cooper Kupp as he is getting right now?
I mean, I think Odell knew what he was signing up for before he got there. I think you only have to look at the numbers to see that Stafford and Kupp are a thing. You know, that's quite frankly obvious. We'll talk about MVPs later, and Cooper Kupp's probably going to be in the conversation if you're looking outside of a quarterback because the guy is absolutely balling right now. When Odell obviously had his choice of place when he cleared waivers, LA's got obviously other pools, as Toni alluded to, but he knew from a football perspective when he coming over there, he will be the second guy, maybe even the third guy. You've got Robert Woods, and obviously he wasn't out for the season when he signed. And even Van Jefferson was coming on nicely. He's part of an offense, isn't he? I think he appreciates that. I think it's a change of scenery. I mean, it's hard because a lot of people are assuming that because the reason he leaves Cleveland, he gets out of Cleveland is because he wasn't getting his touches. Yeah, that's part of the reason, but maybe there was just no affinity there. I mean, just because Cooper's got all those numbers, that puts kind of like a target on his own back, doesn't it? Teams will start double teaming, and we only have to look at Tennessee to see what happens when you've got a real elite wide receiver in AJ Brown and nothing opposite him when Julio Jones out for, he's on IR now for a few weeks. The Saints completely and utterly double teamed AJ Brown last week, so much so that I think he got one reception. That will happen to Kupp if they haven't got any options outside of him. So they do need to have different options to pass to, and obviously that's Van Jefferson over the middle, and it's Odell Beckham on the opposite side. I don't see it as a problem. No, as long as Odell fits in, and I think he will. I think it's overblown that the histrionics things on the sideline. We even saw that last night. He's just keen to win. I think he's looking to try and. Last night, for instance, after the first quarter, he's talking quite animatedly with the offensive coordinator and with Stafford about where they're going wrong, essentially, and that's what you want to see to some extent. So I don't think it's going to be a problem going forward. I think it's like we just discussed, really, it's just going to take 2 or 3 weeks, and if the targets do get shared out, that's better for the offense, not necessarily for Cooper Kupp, but it is better for the offense. That's a more dynamic, varied threat, rather passing game will help the Rams get where they want to go.
So I've got this theory, and I'm going to ask Toni to, I guess, counter my theory in some ways. I've had this feeling with Odell that he is what I think he's talented. I think he's got the it factor. But I've always said, if you look at Odell Beckham Jr. in terms of what he's accomplished in his career, he's known for a highlight. Respectfully, as much. And then he's known for his brand outside of the game, which is fine. I think NFL players less so than NBA players struggle to create a brand outside of the game because you can't, sometimes you struggle to put face to certain players and stuff like that. Whereas I think Odell had succeeded with that. My thing with Odell was he's known as the highlight guy rather than a successful guy. And I get that he's not been in the best of situations and stuff. And also in Cleveland, when it was going a bit wrong, but then it went right for Cleveland, it was without Odell. So the way I look at it is now in LA, if they're on a bye this week, if they come back and they lose again, and then they lose 2 out of 3, to you, Toni, are there going to be like questions, or wait a minute, was this Odell signing a bit of a struggle if they tried to then force the ball to Odell? Because I personally think, and it's not because I'm known as the Brown Brayless or anything, because I did agree with what Skip said, though. He said, first opening play, go to Odell. The long ball, you go straight to Odell. Get him integrated straight away, get a highlight play in. If they do, let's run hypotheticals. If they lose 2 out of 3 and there's an element where Odell still has poor numbers, are people going to put the narrative on that Odell might just not be as good as we think?
100%, because I feel like, as you and Skip Bayless and some people, and there's some truth into it, but it's not. I don't think it's his fault. I feel like, cool, that catch that happened in New York, that was his rookie season, and that was one of the best catches we've ever seen, right? like let's admit it, it's one of the best catches we've ever seen. And from there, he built a name of it. He built a brand of the one-handed catches. But I feel like we still need to remember, like, regardless of that catch, he was still a very good wide receiver. He did have 1,000 yards receiving in Cleveland. So like, even though it didn't work out in Cleveland, like we still know he's a 1,000-yard receiver. So I feel like because of what's happened now and the way he's left Cleveland, if the Rams start losing and his numbers don't go up in a sense, then yes, people have rights to question him. But I don't want to. It won't be a question of is he a good receiver or not, because I feel like he's done enough to prove that. It's just looking at the core, because there are way too many good receivers right now in the league. Back in the day when OBJ was at, I was going to say Newcastle, when OBJ was at New York, he was a top 5 receiver in the league. But now we're looking at it, you got Devontae Adams, you got, what's it called, D-Hop, you got AJ Brown. I wouldn't even put AJ Brown as a top 5. You got Devontae Adams. You got so many different people getting it done, and OBJ is not getting it done anymore. I'm not saying he's not a good quarterback, but that narrative is going to come as in, you know what? Other than that highlight and a couple good seasons, he may not be as good as we think. And that's not even down to him. That's just because there's just better receivers at the moment, and he's not on the trajectory he once was. So it's up to the Rams. I don't think the Rams are going to lose, though. Like, I know they've got a bye this week. The Rams are still a good team. They're practically on paper the best team in football. So I don't expect them to fall down the pecking order in the sense of the NFC West, or just not even reach the playoffs. So we're going to see a lot of it. Barring he stays fit, we'll see a lot of Odell, and we'll see his numbers rise.
And just finally on Odell, before I actually move to Stafford, and Sam, I'll come to you for this. He's got a 1-year deal with the Rams. When this deal expires, at what point do you think the Rams, what is going to be the trigger point for you where the Rams think, okay, let's sign him onto a bit of a longer deal? Or do you think it could actually be a case where Odell, he's 29, going on 30, could be that guy where he moves to different teams signing short-term deals, 1-2 year deals?
I think he's signing with the Rams regardless of performance this season, to be quite honest. I think the Rams like to pick up these big name guys. I mean, they like productive ones as well, but it's almost becoming kind of like the globetrotter version of the NFL, hasn't it, really? I mean, it almost reminds me a little bit of when the Eagles did this a decade ago when they had signed Vince Young and a few others, and they called it the Dream Team. It has that feel about it with, you know, all that talent on defense and now splashing the draft picks. In fact, if you look at Les Snead's history at the Rams, he's really not been afraid to go out and acquire talent at the expense of the NFL draft. I think they will definitely sign to a long-term deal. I don't know how long it'll be. It might be a 1 or 2 year deal again, but I think they want to keep him in-house, certainly for this next season. And if it is a bit of a sluggish start in LA, they can just basically apportion the reasoning for that to being he's come in mid-season, he hasn't had an off-season in this offense, you know, and he's coming at a tough time when other players have gone out injured. I honestly don't think there's a situation whereby, unless he really goes off the rails, and I don't think he will. I honestly don't think he will. He'll be relishing this challenge and this opportunity in LA as much as anything. I think it's a place that suits him as well personally, you know, in terms of his personality. And I don't think, like you say, there's a bit of a brand about him, which he obviously relishes that side of his career so far. You won't want to go somewhere like Tennessee or Buffalo, you know, and just to keep his game going. I see a guy who wants to stay here, wants to make a part of this here, and maybe even go out a little bit earlier in his career, and so he can keep that kind of almost like image of himself as someone who's a superstar. Yeah, I think he's sticking around in the Rams for a while.
And let's go to the quarterback then. A guy that will be sticking around with the Rams, Matthew Stafford. Tony, I'll come to you because I feel like we're similar on this wavelength that we've talked about. How can Stafford really improve the Rams? In the sense that Goff took him to the Super Bowl with McVay. The only way really to eclipse that for me is to win it. 2 divisional games, where 2 out of the 3 losses, I believe, have come in divisional games. And we said this when they lost to Arizona, okay, wait, the pressure's on you. When the lights are on you, can you win? And we look at Stafford now. Again, he's lost. Yesterday was a poor performance. And my question to you is Stafford a bit overrated? He produces the numbers, but can he produce the key victories?
I won't say overrated, but you know how I feel with Matthew Stafford. When Matthew Stafford came in, I went, you know what, Jared Goff. Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Jared Goff. Like, I can admit that. but Jared Goff got that Rams to. Bear in mind, they scored 3 points in the Super Bowl, but he got them to a Super Bowl, right? Can Jared Goff get this Rams team to a Super Bowl? I'm not entirely sure. I feel like they can, only because I feel they've added Von Miller, they've added their team is stacked, right? So that's why I feel like they can make the Super Bowl, but it won't be down to Matthew Stafford. Like if they go up against Brady in the Bucks, I'm putting my money on Brady in the Bucks. Even if they go up against a healthy Arizona, I think I would put Arizona above the Rams. And that's not. I just see Matthew Stafford he has the numbers. Yes, I know his numbers were inflated because he had Megatron, and I think I would get a lot of passing yards if I had Megatron down the field. But what I will say is that he's a better quarterback than Jared Goff, so he will put the Rams in better situations than Jared Goff did, but I just don't see him being that guy to take them to a Super Bowl. So I won't say he's overrated, because overrated is a bit of a stretch. But people like to if you put Matthew Stafford in this team, we'll see. Listen, they've only lost 3 games, right? So they're 7-3, which isn't. It's not.
2 are in the division.
2 in division games. But then again, the NFC West is the hardest division in football right now. So, listen, they'll still make the playoffs. I don't think they'll make the Super Bowl, but I feel like if they win or make the Super Bowl, it won't be down to Matthew Stafford. I think it'll be down to the team rather than Matthew Stafford.
And I guess just quickly then, when I look at the Rams, Simon, and I'll come to you, I think one thing that when it comes to the NBA anyway, we always talk about there's 2 or 3 teams that have not cherry-picked, but are stacked, like, this is the favorite for the NBA championship, these 2 teams and stuff like that. I look at the Rams and I think they look like the team that if you were in the NBA, you'd be like, that's the favorite. They are loaded, both sides. And there comes that argument, Super Bowl or bust in terms of just the season. With how they are constructed both offensively and defensively and who they've acquired in the free agent, before the trade deadline, are you looking at it to say, one, you guys are the favorites, and not necessarily the Super Bowl or bust strapline, but if they don't win the Super Bowl, this would be a bit of a failure of a season?
I think it is Super Bowl or bust. I think that's where the Rams are now. I think if you look at the NFL as a whole, and certainly compared to American sports, it's all about balance, right? Certainly compared to the NBA and baseball, you can go and acquire talent in those 2 sports. There's not much of a salary cap. It's much more simple to do. It's not easy to do in this league, but more so than that, it is all about balance. I think that certain things will debilitate teams that you just don't expect. I'm really worried about the Rams' loss of Robert Woods. Not only is he a chain mover as a receiver, he's one of the best blocking receivers in the NFL. Something like that you don't really appreciate. But when you've got an injured running game, you're missing your key pieces, the backfield, your Cam Akers and things like that. It makes quite significant, isn't it, when you lose stuff like that up front? So, yeah, you can go and acquire all the time in the world. We've seen this, numerous teams do this over time. The Dallas Cowboys are the perfect example of having a star-studded roster and never really doing anything for it. That being said, they're still very talented. They're still a player football team. Just bringing back to Matt Stafford, this is a guy who, like we talked before the show, Abbas, he's got the most 4th quarter comeback victories in NFL history. That's a byproduct of playing for a very, very poor Detroit Lions football team, but he made them relevant in the Jim Caldwell era. I think he won 1 playoff game down there, something that no one's done for a long time in the Motor City. They have the pieces now to be a playoff team, whether or not they win the Super Bowl. But I've seen much worse quarterbacks than Matthew Stafford make the Super Bowl. You'll have to look at Trent Dilfer at the Ravens, and I've seen worse quarterbacks win them. You think what you want about Eli Manning, but talent for talent wise, I would argue Matthew Stafford's a better quarterback certainly in the peaks. So they've got the pieces there. Last night, Monday Night Football, they were battered. They were purely utterly battered. 2 big losses in a row as well. The 49ers are no mugs, and when they get on a roll, they can really cause problems. But this defense, I would argue, was a significant issue. Once after the first 2 picks, the offense moved the football. They couldn't quite punch it in, but they moved the ball quite freely. The defense was the bigger issue, and Jalen Ramsey was another guy on the sideline, being very demonstratively upset with his defensive coordinator, Raheem Morris, and how they weren't able to cope with this diverse attack by the 49ers. Like you guys say, this is the NFC West. This is no cakewalk at all. But I do think they'll be in there. And once you're in the mix, I think they've got the pieces to go all the way if they want to. I know on our podcast, like two of the guys were thinking that the Rams were the team to beat in the NFC. I probably to the Packers on that. Certainly did before the season started. But yeah, it is. They've basically thrown all the chips into the middle of the table, haven't they? With this talent acquisition, the age of the roster, a Super Bowl or bust to some extent for them. I do believe they have pieces to get there, but this sport is so fickle. It doesn't mean they are going to get there. That's as simple as that, isn't it? That's the way the sport is.
Now, staying on a quarterback that has been to a Super Bowl, and this is for you, Tony, because I know this is your guy. I think when they talk about perfect homecomings and like storybooks and stuff like that, I think Cam Newton coming back, signing the deal that he did, which is actually kind of financially friendly to him as well, and then scoring the first touchdown, doing the celebration. Is this the best situation Cam Newton could have found himself in regards to the division, the team, the fans, everything? Or do you think there could have been something better for him?
No, 100%. He even said it himself. If you watch his vlog on his way back to Carolina, like they shouldn't have got rid of him in the first place. I know it got a bit sour when he left Carolina, then he went to Patriots, and then obviously now he's back. But one thing we've got to remember is that Mr. Carolina, he was an MVP there. He has a very good relationship with the organization. Carolina are still paying him. They're still paying Carolina's replacement, and they're still paying.
I've seen that.
Yeah, they're paying Cam's replacement. But that's down to Carolina. But honestly, just those touches as well he had, because listen, he barely played much of the game. PJ Walker was looking. And shout out to PJ Walker, who's undefeated in his professional career, by the way. I think 2-0 in the NFL and 5-0 in the XFL. So shout out PJ Walker. But it just shows, like, listen, at the goal line, we all knew that first touchdown, we all knew exactly what Cam was going to do, and they couldn't stop it. And this is a decent Arizona defense. So it shows that, listen, the guy should be in the league. There's a reason why he's an MVP. He shouldn't have been a free agent, but the Patriots don't really care because Matt Jones is looking decent, and he's gone back to Carolina, a team which he loved and a team which he took to the Super Bowl. So it's just a perfect fit. It's just a nice homecoming to see, especially like 10 years ago, his debut was at Arizona, which I still think was one of the best rookie debuts we've ever seen. I think he threw for like 400 yards or something stupid like that. Threw for a crazy amount that day. But yeah, it just goes to show how I'm just happy for him. I'm happy for him as a person. Just nice to see him back in the league, and that's to see him scream, "I'm back!" Like
I was gonna say, like, look, he's in my division, but seeing that celebration, I thought, you know what, that is kind of cool. Like, I remember Twitter, like, I don't think I've seen Twitter ever like talk about the Carolina Panthers. Like, nobody on the NFL Sunday, like, who's really gonna care about the Panthers? No offense to any Panthers fans, but that little period. Now, just quickly, what you said, then, Simon, do you expect Carolina to give Cam Newton the team and say to him, here you go, you're our number one guy again? And if so, bearing in mind how the NFC is looking in general, can they make that push to secure a playoff spot?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll give it him overnight. I think they'll work him in. I think what they did on Sunday was fantastic. Mixed him in with PJ Walker. Guys, they've got quite a similar skill set, both mobile quarterbacks. PJ's obviously a bit quicker. Cam, obviously a bit stronger. I really enjoyed it. I think what we saw in New England with Cam is his love for football diminished a little bit. That light in his eyes faded. That smile a bit more strained, I would say. But it was back, wasn't it? On Sunday, It was back. Big time back. He loves it in Carolina. He's comfortable in Carolina. He will eventually ascend to that quarterback one role in Carolina. He's getting the money for it, so it makes sense. Will he be the same Cam as he was 6-7 years ago? Probably not. And I think Panthers fans are understandable of that. Is he good enough to get into the playoffs? Yeah, the Panthers if the season finished now, the Panthers are there already. They're the 7th seed in the NFC. That defense is legit. They'll play with anybody. Really will. Got real talent on the ball. And Christian McCaffrey obviously being back just changed the outlook of that offense completely. So Cam's an upgrade on PJ Walker, as good as the guy's been. A great story from the XFL, But yeah, I would be fully confident in seeing the Panthers at least challenge for it. You're looking at those last two spots, aren't you, in the NFC behind the Big Five, and the Saints are in the mix. I think the Panthers will think they consider themselves in the mix too.
And just quickly, I just want to touch on, before we do wrap up, the MVP discussion. I feel like it's a bit all over the place. There isn't a clear-cut favourite. So I just want names from each of yourselves. Who do you think is, I guess, quote-unquote, the favourite for the MVP? Tony, I'll go to you.
I don't think as you said, there's not an out front runner at the moment. There's not like we were week 5, we were saying, okay, it's going to be Lamar. Then we were going to say it's going to be Josh Allen. And then now you can even maybe, I don't want to say you can look at Aaron Rodgers, but like the Packers are a good team at the moment. I don't think Rodgers will win it back to back because there's no really narrative. He's not having a massive season. Week 1, it was Derek Carr. So like you just never know. If I had to put my money on anyone right now, I would say either Lamar or Josh Allen. But other than that, there isn't any. I'm looking at I'm not going to put Dak in there.
Just say it. I know you want to say it. You want to say it. You want to say Dak Prescott.
No.
Come on board with the Cowboys.
No, the Cowboys are good this season, but Dak hasn't impressed me as much this season. He impressed me week 1 of what he did in that loss to the Bucs, but there's no narrative behind it. Like the Dallas are okay; they're a good team. That loss to the Broncos wasn't great. I can put, if Kyler was fit and healthy, I would put Kyler Murray in that discussion. Like I'm the only person I can say that I said in the offseason, I said, watch out for Arizona. I said, Arizona are going to be a very good team. And I remember I said that on the podcast. So shout out to me there. But if not,
you cut yourself out.
Yeah, mate. Listen, it was one of my many predictions of the NFL season. I said, listen, they're a very balanced team. I love Cliff Kingsbury. I love Kyler Murray. And they just got better. And even though they lost, I think they'll still win that division, in my opinion. I feel like they'll still win it if everyone comes back healthy. But yeah, Lamar or Josh Allen. Lamar hasn't looked too great the past couple of games. Josh Allen looks right.
I think Josh Allen. I was going to say Josh Allen and the Buffalo team. It's not that they're going under the radar. It's just that they're getting the job done, and they're going through the motion because you expect.
Other than losing to Jacksonville, which was a bit.
So yeah, quickly, Simon, for yourselves, who's your right now week 10 MVP?
Forget the quarterbacks. None of them standing out. Let's go. Let's mix this up a bit. Running back, Jonathan Taylor for the Colts. You know, he's almost at 6 yards a carry, 1,000 yards already this season, almost double figures for touchdown. Put him in. Wide receiver, already mentioned his name, Cooper Kupp. I mean, just having a ridiculous season. He 1,141 yards already. Again, 10 touchdowns. Really stepped it up since he's coming to the league. And what about defender? What about Myles Garrett? You know, he's 12 sacks already this season. Could break the record held by Strahan. They've got an extra game to do it. But, you know, I think the NFL needs to get past this quarterback nonsense.
Yeah.
And give it to the guy who is actually the best player in the NFL.
I'm with you, but it isn't the nice pick to have. Wide receiver might be a little bit, but the defensive side, I'm not. I'm sticking with that. Now, before we do wrap up, I do want to ask you guys, Simon, quickly from you. One game, I'm just going to say one game that you think is the standout game of the week. I personally have mine, and I'll be surprised if you guys don't have the same.
Well, I know what you're going to say, because I'm going to err away from that. And as always, why don't we go to a toilet bowl and watch the hapless Dolphins go to the hapless Jets in a matchup of misery in the AFC East? You know, if you're a sucker for punishment, that's it. I'm not joking. Forget that game. Don't ever watch that game. What about the Colts going to Buffalo? I think the Colts are on a little bit of a rise now, could sneak into that playoff conversation. And that's a statement win if you go into like upstate New York and manage to knock off the Bills. So, you know, a little bit wobbly recently. I think that's a good game to keep an eye out for.
Tony?
You know what? Obviously, I know what you're going to say. I'm trying to pick another team. I feel like the Raiders, Bengals, or the Chargers, Steelers. I might go Chargers, Steelers because you never know with Pittsburgh. Like, you never know. Pittsburgh, they can be a decent team and beat and look decent, but then they can go and draw and tie to, who do they tie with? Detroit. So you never know. And then the Chargers as well. People were Chargers up. Sometimes they're up and down. I feel like they're both up and down teams in the AFC where you're thinking, okay, you know what? We could probably see both of you in the playoffs. But then again, you haven't shown me enough to think like you're actually legit contenders. So I feel like it could be a good above average game. I wouldn't say a great game, but a good above average game. Both teams that are above average. I don't know how it'll work, but it looks decent.
And this is where I'm gonna say you watch Dallas Cowboys beat up Kansas City, and everybody who does power rankings officially puts the Dallas Cowboys as the number 1 team in the NFL. And we will wrap it up on that. But before we go, Simon, as we always do with all our guests, shout out where everybody can see you and where they can see your content.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at NFL DraftSci, or follow the website The Touchdown at The Touchdown NFL, and listen to the Collapsing Pocket podcast, which is available via all major platforms.
And with that, that is another episode of the Blitz wrapped up. Again, Simon, I appreciate you for coming on as always. Toni, coming on as my co-host, even though sometimes I don't agree with your views. We have a lot more content coming up. You can see everything. Follow our socials at the.zoneldn, Instagram and Twitter. Same with the Zone YouTube channel. We're going to have this up. We're going to clip it up and everything. Aside from that, guys, again, appreciate you. That's been another episode of the Blitz. Go Cowboys.